What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and the overall market. I'm going to break down what's happening to the overall news that's coming out for tomorrow since we have CPI, which is going to be very important. Not to mention some news about earnings and Tesla, which are also very, very pivotal for the share price. But before I break into all this information, before I talk about Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, and all these tickers, and give you guys some price predictions, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Mumu link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Mumu, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and this offer ends in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, we saw this some very, very interesting price action. We got this nice pop upon open as Tesla reached this 182.5 resistance before it came right back down and started to consolidate very close to expectations. Now, Tesla ended up pushing a little bit higher than what I was expecting yesterday as this thing got some very good news about the German Gigafactory restoring power very soon. And then this thing ended up coming back down. And then when this move ended up happening, we did get a pop and drop as predicted. Then I told you guys it would likely consolidate as the day went on approaching CPI. And that's what ended up happening for the rest of the day. But the question is, what's going to happen moving forward? Why do I think the market has potential to bounce tomorrow looking at current CPI data? And what do I think is going to pan out? So I'm going to actually talk about the charts a little bit later into this video. Let's first talk about some data. Let's talk about the information, all that stuff first before I break down more details. So what's happening for tomorrow? Tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the CPI and core CPI data report coming out. This is going to be very, very important. This is important for the Fed's policy, the current well-being of everyday Americans, and other things like that. I also want to add that I know that CPI is not fully accurate. I know it's very manipulated, and we can't always believe everything we're being told. And with that being said, I don't fully trust all this data, but I simply go over all this data because I have to. This is what the market uses. This is what the market moves based off of. And this is what a lot of these funds and institutions use as an excuse to move liquidity around here and there, which causes massive moves in the stock market that affects Tesla. So with that being said, what's happening tomorrow? So once again, an hour before market open at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have CPI coming out year over year. This is for all items. We want this to be around 3.1 to 3.2%. If it's above 3.3%, that's bearish. If it's around expectations or below that, that is bullish. For month over month, we want CPI for all items to be 0.3 to 0.4%. If it's above 0.4%, that's bearish. If it's around that or below that, that's going to be bullish. For core CPI year over year, we want this to be between 3.7 and 3.8%. The last time this came out, it was 3.9%. So we want this to be below 3.7% or around there. If it's above 3.9%, that's bearish. So be very careful. If it's below 3.8, 3.7% or around that or below, that is bullish. Now, for basically core CPI, we want this to be going up by 0.3% or lower to be bullish. Above that is bearish. Now, here's what the chart looks like thus far. As you guys could see, there's a clear downtrend on CPI for all items just based off the data. But core CPI tends to be a bit more sticky, especially as of recent. So, what do I see from this? I think that there's a very good chance that CPI for all items is going to be close to expectations because the last time it came out, it was very close to this like 3% area, a little bit higher than that. So it's actually a nice decline. It's still actually continuing to drop. So I think there's a good chance for all items that the data comes out decent for CPI. However, for core, as this has been a lot more sticky, this is harder to predict. There is a risk of this being very close to expectations too. So we'll just see what it looks like. But I'm not 100% certain about core. This could go either way because it's very sticky. But based off how the market's looking right now, there's a very good chance it might continue to push once the data comes out. I'll show you guys that in just a few minutes. Let's go over some earnings and then some data for Tesla before I break down the charts. After the market close today, we had Oracle and Asana announcing their earnings. For tomorrow, don't forget we have Kohl's, we have more retail stocks coming out like ADM, we have Dollar Tree coming out for Wednesday, and Petco, not to mention Dollar Tree, Dick's Sporting Goods, Adobe, and a couple of others for Thursday. So we'll see how things go for that. But for now, let's talk about Oracle and Asana. Oracle did relatively well because the CEO just announced that they expect to continue receiving large contracts reserving cloud infrastructure capacity because demand for their Gen 2 AI infrastructure is exceeding supply, which is great news for them. When it comes to their earnings alone, they beat on EPS at $1.41, and their revenue right here was very close to expectations. However, what's very important would be their sales side of things. As revenue is growing, we're seeing good growth overall in their cloud services, and their licensing agreements are still looking quite strong. With new cloud infrastructure and high demand, good guidance, and overall, meeting slash beating earnings, this is bullish for Oracle, and they're up 13% so far. For Asana, on the other hand, they had kind of like pretty decent earnings, but their guidance was not what a lot of investors were wanting. That's why this thing ended up dropping. So their loss was 4 cents. That is technically a little bit better than expected. We were expecting a loss of 10 cents. It's not bad. Their revenue overall was so so, but what's not so good is the fact that for their estimations, we're seeing a lot of revisions for them. And right now, they're basically telling us that for the fiscal year, they're still expecting a loss. EPS is estimated to be a loss of 0.08. So they're still losing 8 cents per share, which is not the best of news. They're not at profitability yet, and they're not even expecting it so far, which is why the share price, in my opinion, is still not responding so positively. That's why the share price is down. Market volatility is at extreme fear. The market is starting to panic in terms of volatility, and the VIX is just going up like crazy. So that's typically when it's at these levels, well above the 50 daily moving average. If we get a rejection here, we'll see what happens, as the VIX is seeing some signals of potentially rejecting soon. So we'll see what happens there. And then finally, the market is back to greed. We'll see if this gets adjusted as well tomorrow once all the data comes out. For Tesla, we had some interesting news. So, led by Tesla, US EV prices dropped about 13% year over year in February. Tesla did have to do this because of slowing demand, of course, and for many other reasons. But the question, in my opinion, is how well do their deliveries look, which is coming out in just a couple of weeks. We had some analysts come out who gave some very, very weak estimates for Tesla's deliveries, which was a little bit bearish for Tesla. That's why I think the share price started dropping later on, not to mention other factors like the markets. But we do have some good news on the other hand. The good news for Tesla is that the Berlin Gigafactory has restored power. The power is back after the sabotage attack, and that's good news for Tesla. Now, right now, even though the power is back, the thing is, we don't truly know exactly when production is going to be restarting, but this is a very, very good step in the right direction. So, right now, they basically were the fire that essentially happened and the sabotage to their power grid. This basically prevented Tesla from producing 1,000 cars per day, and it cost them hundreds of millions of euros, if not close to a billion, according to different sources. But because power is back, there's progress for Tesla to restart their production, which should be happening sometime this week. But it's not yet possible to say how long it's going to take until production can be fully resumed, according to Tesla so far. So this is your update so far. This is a good piece of news. Some progress is being made, but we'll see what happens from there. For volume, we got about 85 million. That is a little bit below average, but not the worst. And then in terms of short volume, it's kind of dropping a little bit as Tesla's gaining some strength. Now, Morgan Stanley came out. They're saying Tesla's going to outperform the markets, as we are seeing some analysts giving some bullish targets on Tesla, but some of them did cut their overall target. So they're still bullish, saying it's going to go to 345 a share before. Now they're saying it's going to go to 320. So they're still bullish, but just not as bullish as before because of current estimates and also because of other factors. The price risk ratio is also still down here. It might try to bounce a little bit if Tesla does try to get a counter trend move. And Tuesdays are historically pretty decent days for Tesla. We're green about 52% of the time. March tends to be a good month for Tesla historically too. So let's hope Tesla tries to get a bounce from here as we start off on a very, very weak note. Anyways, that is it when it comes to data and things like that. Now I just want to focus a lot more on what the charts are essentially suggesting for Tesla and the market. So starting off with Tesla, I just want to say that Tesla got this nice little pop today approaching resistance at this 182.5 zone. Then it came back down, came all the way down to essentially 176.5 at one point before coming back up. And we're still holding up nicely. Now, I personally think that when you look at the overall market and how things are looking with CPI data coming out, the market looks like it's going to most likely try to push when CPI comes out, and this could actually drag Tesla upwards. And here's exactly why. So I'm going to talk more about SPY and the QQQ before I talk about Tesla. So the first thing worth noting is that when we fell today to the target I called out at 508.5, we have an inverse head and shoulders that formed on SPY. That's the first thing. And then on the QQQ is the same thing, an inverse head and shoulders like structure developed. And this could actually take us higher into the 440 area. For SPY, the inverse head and shoulder could take us all the way up towards 514, 515 like that. So looking at the charts on SPY and the QQQ, I want to show you guys something very good, at least for the bulls. that's the fact that we had a falling wedge developing. I did call this out, and we're starting to get a breakout for now, which is a very good sign. So inverse head and shoulders, that's your first bullish signal. A falling wedge breakout, that's a second bullish signal. The third thing is the fact that CPI has been on a downtrend overall, and the market is looking like it's trying to push approaching, especially as we're breaking some key resistance levels. So there's a very good chance that CPI is going to come in decent, or at least the market's going to respond positively, at least temporarily, and we might see SPY reach at least 514 to 515 tomorrow, and it could reject off that. I'm not going to worry about rejections yet. We just have to see what it does once it gets up there, but I do believe 514 to 515 is possible for tomorrow, as the market looks very optimistic approaching the CPI report. I did say that SPY could drop a little bit more before we get a bounce, and that's what's happening thus far. Now, saying this does not make me a mega bull in the markets, because our all-time highs in this 518 area. What if we push all the way up to like 516, 517 again, or even 518, somewhere here? But then we get a rejection, and we could still come back down, right? It could still be bearish even if this happens. Even if we push up here, the trend could still be shifting. So this does not necessarily mean because SPY is pushing a bit, and I think it's going to push, it means I'm a mega bull. But I'm going to talk more about that maybe later on. But for now, I think that if we're bearish on SPY, we want to see it lose 511.7 and come back down to 510. If we lose that, a bigger drop could come to the 507s, 505s if we get a hot CPI. If CPI is as expected or decent, we could see SPY push up towards like 515, very close to that area, if not higher. And I think that that is where I lean towards looking at the technicals. Technicals do suggest we could be pushing for at least 514 to 515. So I do favor that somewhat more on SPY. For the QQQ, it's basically the same thing. We had a falling wedge-like setup. We have an inverse head and shoulders. They all suggest upside is likely coming. And on top of this, we're seeing us kind of turning on bigger time frames. And if we're bullish, you want to see it break past 440 and eventually hit 442. If we're bearish, you want to see it basically lose 438 and come down to at least 434. I think that's the odds favor in inverse head and shoulders, and another like kind of like counter trend move as we dropped really hard without getting much of a bounce. So we might see the market rebound a bit, and we'll see where we end up topping at. So we're not going to worry quite yet about. Let's just see what happens tomorrow first. So that's the reason why I think that the overall momentum in the market is so collective in a way. So that's why when you look at the market, right? Today, the market came down. Tesla outperformed it just somewhat because we had some bullish news. But look at how the market moved. Rivian was red, SoFi red, ARM red, QQQ red. Apple is showing some strength. This was green. Nvidia red, Microsoft red, all the big names, Amazon red, Meta red. The market tends to move very collectively with some exceptions such as like Coinbase and Apple. So my point is, if we get a bounce on SPY and the QQQ tomorrow, the Dow follows it, if the IWM follows it, we might see this make its way throughout the entire market, and this might actually give us an extra boost. So for Tesla is also very news dependent. As long as Tesla does not have a major horrible piece of news, I think Tesla is going to follow the trend. If we're bearish after CPI comes out, we could retrace to 175. If we're bullish, you're going to be looking for a break of 180. If that breaks, 182 could come, then 184. What do I favor? I'm starting to think that Tesla may make an attempt to try to push up higher, and we might try to make our way up towards at least 180 plus, depending on how bullish of a move Tesla gets. And if we hold above this, there is potential for 184 to be coming, as we have not just like a gap to fill, but also resistance up there. And we have an imbalance up here at like 188, so we could see a little counter trend move for Tesla overall. So I believe Tesla has potential to try to push higher, try to at least get up to these higher resistance zones. I do favor that somewhat more, but there is an exception. As long as there's no bad news for Tesla, Tesla will likely follow the market and try to get a bounce for tomorrow. For a few more, such as Apple is showing a lot of strength, and here's the reason why. I mean, like I mentioned in my earlier video, right? When you look at Apple like this, when you look at the yellow trend line, right? We rejected again last week. We keep rejecting off the yellow line until today came. Until today came, this thing broke past the yellow resistance, right? We came back down. We're back testing support at 172.5 and is trying to bounce off of that. As we have this gap up here, there's a very, very high probability Apple's going to try to respect a little uptrend, try to push higher towards 175. If we're bearish, you want to see it basically lose this yellow trend line and go back down to at least 170.9. But my gut is telling me it might try to push towards 175 plus. We could also draw out another trend line right here. Let me show you right here, and we can actually kind of connect these support areas. So this is like acting as support right here, little uptrend on Apple. It's looking a bit more bullish to me. It's trying to push a little higher, so we'll see if Apple could try to push. So I do favor that somewhat more. From a technical standpoint, Nvidia is not looking as strong, but that doesn't guarantee anything. It's not looking as strong considering the fact that it continues to get rejected, but now it looks like it's trying to show strength in the after hours. I would say that for Nvidia, I'm going to be watching this resistance right here, so I'm going to draw a yellow trend line right here, and we're going to see if we can maintain this level above this breakout zone. If Nvidia gets that break, I'm going to be watching 880. If we break past this, we could get closer to 900 again. If we lose 851, I think 844 is next, and we could start sinking lower. My gut is telling me this is going to try to break out and try to push, so we'll see if we end up getting that. Overall, Nvidia, in my opinion, this thing is basically a little indecisive, but it has some potential to try to break out if we manage to get a big push through this yellow trend line. So that being said, guys, that is it for the main five I typically go over. Let's go over a couple more, and I'm going to try to be very brief with these other ones because I don't want to make this video like way too long. So, real quick, when it comes to the way the market's moving, let's start off with the Rivian. Rivian, in my opinion, it's showing a little bit of weakness from a technical standpoint. I could see this thing actually retrace a bit towards 12.34, if not 12.12, and then try to bounce. So it might come down a little bit more than try to make its way back up, but that's the most likely possibility. If we lose 12.12, a bigger drop is coming. If we hold 12.12 to 12.3, we could try to rebound and make our way back up to 13. I think a drop and bounce is most likely what's going to happen. For SoFi is showing some it's kind of in the middle because it depends on CPI. If we get a decent CPI, we could push for 8 to 8.2. If we get a hot CPI, we could be retracing towards 7.5. My guts tells me it might be trying to push back up. We have to break our 20 EMA at 7.73 first, and there is potential for it to retest $8. For ARM is kind of on the downtrend, looking a little bit weak right now, at least based off technicals. If we get some kind of rebound, we could retest, I'd say 130. And if we're bearish, we could be coming all the way down towards this 119 area, which is where we have this imbalance. So I'm kind of in the middle with this. It's still looking very weak from a technical standpoint. Didn't really get much of a bounce with the market. Still underperforming. We'll see if CPI affects this. That's an external factor. Sometimes it's tricky to predict. But the chart looks bearish on ARM. It does not look like it's a great stock to be trading right now, at least during like a CPI report. For Supermicro, it grabbed liquidity down here where our 50 EMA is, so I do see potential for 1100 to be tested. If we break this, 1150 is coming. If we reject, we could retrace towards 1035. My guts tells me it's going to test 1100 and try to break out higher. For Palantir is holding 25.19. If we bounce off this, watch 25.78. If we break through this, we could start pushing higher. My gut is telling me it might try to bounce, but watch it as it gets closer to 26 and see if we break or not. We'll see how it goes from there. For the IWM Russell 2000, this also looks like it might be testing 206. And if we break past that, we have a gap to fill at 206.5. We might try to push a little higher. As long as we hold above 204.73, we're going to try to bounce. So watch for that very carefully. For Microsoft, I called out 402 yesterday. We ended up bouncing at 401.26, very close to our 200 EMA. Trying to bounce right here, I see 407 to 410 coming. I might try to make a counter trend move. So there's a possibility of that. For AMD, I think that there is a possibility, as long as it holds above 199, we could be looking for 200 and 205 to be retested. Might get a little counter trend bounce as it dropped very hard without much of a bounce. So watch for that. If we end up losing 198, a bigger drop could come, but my gut tells me it might try to rebound a bit. We're going to skip over to the VIX. So one thing that's good for the bulls is the fact that the VIX has a rejection candlestick on the 4-hour time frame, suggesting it might come down a bit as the market tries to push higher thanks to CPI. That's what the VIX is suggesting, but the VIX alone is not sufficient. So it's just one indicator, but I'm just going to wait and see just to be safe. But this does give a little bit more confidence that the market may try to bounce tomorrow. The dollar is looking decent right now. It's trying to push towards 102.94. However, if we reject off our 20 EMA, we're going to come back down. If we break past this, we push higher. But watch this test of 102.94. For Coinbase, in my opinion, is coming down a bit. We could see a test of 248. We'll see if this holds or not. It might come down a bit, test this, and we'll see if we get a bounce back up to 270. Or if we lose this 248 support, we start dropping. It is looking a little bit weaker, but CPI could help this thing bounce. So it might come down a bit, then bounce, or just bounce from here to back up to about 270, in my opinion. But watch and see if we get that bounce. And as long as we hold above this green line right here, this 248 area, we're going to be fine. Google may push a little higher towards about 141. I think that this is where it's targeting. 141 could be tested at the 200 EMA, then we'll see what happens after that. Amazon, I'm a little concerned about this because we have a head and shoulders like structure on Amazon. Now, just because we have a head and shoulders, it does not guarantee we're just going to crash forever. When you just look at how this chart looks, right? There's a left shoulder here, there's a head, and there's a right shoulder. If we attempt to get a little rebound, which I think we still could thanks to CPI, we could backtest 174.5, then consolidate a bit, then make our way down later, and this head and shoulders could still be valid. This suggests that if we get a bounce, watch 174. If we start sinking, watch 170 to 168. My guts tells me it might actually retest 174, then make our way down lower later on. But I think the head and shoulders is still valid nonetheless. For Meta, Meta dropped really hard. It went from 523 all the way down to 476 in just one day. Technically, it's only been one trading day since that happened. That makes me think that it might rebound a bit and retest 494. Just to be safe, we'll have to wait and see. The trend is a little bearish, but I think the market CPI could help this try to rebound just a bit, and we'll see if we reject off 494 or not. But look for a little counter trend move. With that being said, guys, I think that there's a very strong possibility that the market may try to pop tomorrow, try to rebound a bit, and this might help Tesla push higher towards the 180 plus area, if not 184, if we get a bigger move. Tesla's looking more bullish on the 4-hour time frame, but we have to try to close above 179 or above our 20 EMA. And there is potential for Tesla to try to get that bounce. But we have to see what happens after CPI, and we'll have to see what happens with all this data. So we'll see how it goes. There is definitely potential for Tesla in the market. I'm not saying that I'm a perma bull. I'm just saying that there could be a counter trend move thanks to CPI, and we'll see what happens after that. Once again, guys, I'm not a fortune teller, so I don't know with 100% certainty what's going to happen after CPI. But I'm telling you guys what I think is my most probable outcome based off many confluences, which means we have so many different indicators kind of telling us the market may try to bounce, from looking at divergences, looking at inverse head and shoulders, falling wedges, what the VIX is doing. All these different things are suggesting the market may go a little higher tomorrow. So it makes me a bit more confident in making that claim. I'm not 100% confident, but I'm a bit more confident in saying that. And I just want to let you guys know it's a lot more probable. All right, so that's what I have for this one. Thank you all so much for listening. Always watch your levels and be prepared for anything on a CPI day, but just know that the odds do favor upside based off technicals and other factors. All right, thank you. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning before CPI comes out. Have a great evening and peace out.